This is Rabbi Chaim Steinmetz with Sermons for Snowbirds. This week we have a special edition on the passing of Ariel Sharon. Sharon is a very difficult figure to eulogize. You know, if Dale Carnegie's best-selling book was How to Win Friends and Influence People, Sharon probably could have written a book, How to Win Enemies and Annoy People. Because Sharon, throughout the course of his career, managed to enrage both the left and the right. The left he enraged with his early support for the settlements, for his leadership during the Lebanon War, even some of the actions going back to his leader of Unit 101 in the 1950s. The right, of course, he enraged by what was perceived as a betrayal by him, by disengaging from Gaza and starting a new political party called Kadima. And so Sharon, on both sides, had enemies on both ends of the spectrum. And he had enraged partisans of both the left and the right. But I want to talk to you about that particular aspect of his life because I think it holds the key to his personality. You know, when the various commentators and analysts were trying to sum up his life, they were trying to understand how the same man who had led the army during the 1973 war so boldly, who had begun the settlement movement, could turn around and then disengage from Gaza and try to pursue peace with the Palestinians. And the commentators are trying to figure out, and they're trying to understand, where did the change come from? And I will tell you that in my mind, I don't think there's been a change in Sharon's life. And that's precisely why he enraged so many. You know, the bulk of Jewish political thinking is shaped by a particular form of idealism. It's not just ordinary idealism, it's messianic idealism. And of course, to be a Jew is every moment to be thinking about the possibilities of redemption. Now, within the concept of redemption, there are two themes that come up in the Bible. On the one hand, there is the theme of sovereignty, of the Jews returning to their homeland, of Vishavu banim ligvulam, that our children, our family, the Jewish people will return home and we will take control of our destiny. That having been in exile for so long, we will be sovereign, we will be strong, we will be independent. And this is a dream that Jews had for 2,000 years before the creation of the State of Israel. And that's one form of messianic idealism, that the Jewish people will be redeemed, will be repatriated, will be independent. But there's another strain of idealism that is messianic, and that is the idealism of peace. Lo yisagay el goy cherev v'lo yilmedu od milchama, as Yeshayahu famously says, that one nation will not go to war with another or raise a sword against another, and they will no longer learn how to go into battle. This is another stream of idealism which comes from this very messianic image, this very messianic dream, that maybe one day we'll have peace. And of course, the left is very influenced by the dream of peace. The right is influenced by the dream of sovereignty, and both become idealists. As Avi Ravitsky put it, the truth is that there are two exiles that we are considering every time we talk about exile. One is the exile from the land of Israel, which the Jewish people experienced, and the other is the exile from the Garden of Eden, which is a universal event in which mankind simply was no longer of the proper character to create a world of peace and love and understanding. But Sharon rejected both of these idealisms. The truth is that Sharon throughout his life was simply a practical man. For him, it wasn't a question of whether we'll have perfect peace and whether we'll follow properly every single nuance of what morality will demand from us. For him, it was really about, can we survive? Can the Jewish state survive? He was the ultimate pragmatist. And so his decisions, which very often enraged the left, were based on his practical understanding of what it takes to be able to be strong, to be able to win, to understand that in a region where Israel is vastly outnumbered and where all of the neighbors are hostile, you need to do things a little bit differently. You need to think out of the box. And similarly, when he enraged the right, it came about because of an understanding that, you know what? There's no way to survive unless we pursue a two-state solution. Sharon was the ultimate pragmatist, and that's precisely why he enraged so many, both on the left and on the right. He refused to follow idealisms. Now, Sharon's idea is really a lesson for all of us, because I don't know about you, but I can tell you I'm a profound idealist. I cannot tell you that I accepted or endorsed many of the things Sharon did. I remember when Rav Soloveitchik told Menachem Begin that there needs to be a commission of inquiry into Sabra and Shatila. I understand how important it is to follow your ideals, but I respect something about Sharon. He was a pragmatist, and sometimes you need people who are practical, who know what it means to survive. You know, there's a fascinating tshuva from the Noda B'Yehuda, a responsa from Rabbi Yecheskel Landau, who was one of the great rabbis in the 18th century in Prague. And Rabbi Yecheskel Landau was discussing a difficult topic about Esther's actions to save the Jewish people in the book of Esther. Rabbi Yecheskel Landau says that maybe sometimes it's different when you're trying to save the entirety of the Jewish people. And that's what Ariel Sharon was trying to do, to save the entirety of the Jewish people. And he understood that sometimes to save everybody, you need to be practical. Ariel Sharon was in many ways like an uncle that all of us has. You know, it's interesting when people describe him, they talk about his avuncular character, that even some of his critics writing about, one of them was writing in an Israeli newspaper about how he hated Sharon because of Sharon's political views. And one day he happens to be on Miluim, he's on reserve duty, and he's in the same room as Sharon. And Sharon looks at him and says, "Come over, eat with me." And he doesn't want to go, he doesn't want to be near Sharon. And Sharon looks at him and says, "I won't bite you. Come sit with me." And then this author writes that after a few minutes he was charmed. He felt like he was sitting with someone that was a member of his family. Or there was the photographer who did a photo shoot first for the New York Times and then a few years later for Time magazine, who tells about how Sharon looked at her at the second photo shoot, which was a couple years later, and said, "Have you made Aliyah yet?" To which she answered, "No, I haven't made Aliyah." So he says to her, "Are you single?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Listen, come to Israel. I'll find you a shidduch." That was Ariel Sharon. He was like everybody's uncle. We don't always agree with our uncles, but we appreciate what they've done. And Ariel Sharon, from the very beginning of his military career, at age 20 in Latrun, where he nearly died in battle, he has always been looking out for us. And he's telling us, maybe you need to be a little bit more practical. If you want to survive in a tough region, it can't be all about idealism. Have a wonderful day, and hope to see you again next week.